Here I am working on a car mount for the Samsung Galaxy Note with my choice of cases, as you can see here. This is our rough product. It is vastly different from what some of my initial draw-ups have done. To be quite honest, it was just very hard to work with for Kydex. Kydex in itself is easy to mold, easy to work with. I erred on the side of caution. I went with a very thick Kydex T 0.093 instead of a 0.05, 0.07, somewhere in that ballpark, just to make sure it was rigid. I mean, this thing is very, very thick. It is easily 2 to 4 times thicker than the plastics used in the case. Definitely went too thick on this one. If you decide to try it yourself, don't worry, go thin. There is almost no give on that. You can see it's very, very rigid. Like I said, it's Kydex T. There's Kydex T, Kydex 100, I believe there is also, and a couple other novelty types with camouflage and all that good stuff. And Kydex, I've heard that stuff's hard to work with, so I didn't touch it. Stuff is cheap, very, very cheap. This right here is a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of Kydex. It cost me $15 shipped to my door. I used half of it sliced out here, leaving enough to make my own car mount if I wish. I think I might try to make my own version of a Pro Clip. It costs about $40 just for that piece to go on my truck. I've got plenty. I might as well try it. If nothing else, toss it in the garbage can on my way back inside. I still have plenty left over for my next one I decide to make, or whatever I end up making. I might just forego that and just order another piece of thinner Kydex and do it that way. You can see it's pretty rough looking. I got to straighten up the edges still. Good old heat gun is great for that. Straighten out, pull this one out, pull this one in, just to make it a little more symmetric. I'm going to take a Dremel, clean up a lot of my lines. There's a lot of jaggedness. That's what happens when you have to use some of the more heavy-duty cutters because it's so thick. A little tip though, if you do try it yourself, heat the stuff up, then start making some of your initial cuts. You'll see on one of the photos where this is still a flat, where I've snipped out edges. I did all those while it was heated up. And speaking of heat, you're working with heat gun is, for this type of project, the easiest. If you're making a sheath or a holster where you're making a pancake or sandwich type, doubling it over your mold and doing it that way, heating the whole thing up and going with it is fine. This, it takes so long to do each one. By the time you're done over here, this is already rock hard again, and then you're screwed. You have to throw it back in the oven. This is going to collapse. It's just too hard to work with. You definitely want to use a heat gun on this. This is putting out, box advertises 1,000 degrees. I'd say more like 700. It's more than enough to give you blisters. I've got one forming on my arm right now where I laid this down. That right there is a little bit of skin off my forearm where I had it laying there. Put my hand across it. Just be careful with these things. They're going to hurt you if you're not careful. They're going to hurt you sometimes even if you are careful. You're going to want a good set of gloves. These kind of do the trick. I like to use them. I've been working with Kydex for a few years on and off. Definitely not a professional by now, but well enough to know enough by learning the hard way. These will do the trick, but you got to be quick. You got to be real quick. I use molds, believe it or not. Carpenter pencil, great for doing this stuff. You can get in there and you can use that to sandwich. When you're making other types of holsters out of Kydex, you're going to be using foam, smashing it down to get more of a pancake in there. This, you're just trying to make straight edges, which they're not going to come out perfect, but you're not worried about perfect, or you would have spent way too much money for one from Mobile City or one of the other 1,000 vendors. But it works, and as you can see, it goes right in, no problem. It doesn't come right out. I'm holding it on the edge right there. It doesn't slide right out, but just grabbing it comes right out. Putting it in, goes right in, no problem. It's not going to rattle out in your car. You're going to do that by making these too tight. test fitting it, and then heating them up and pulling them out a little bit at a time, let it cool, test fit it, pull it out. I like to over tighten and then work my way out. It's easier than bringing it in, back and forth, pain in the butt. So that's pretty much all there is to it. I initially had a lot more tools than I ended up needing. Didn't really need those. Plastic was way too thick. If I had a 0.05, these would have been perfect. I would have made my cuts. Would have been a whole lot prettier. But, yeah, you live, you learn, right? So, other tools, like I said, heat gun. How else are you going to remove the skin and heat the plastic? Good set of cutters. You need your mold. You may notice a coincidence. That happens to be the same size as the phone. It's a little bit thicker. I did that just to give myself a little leeway when doing stuff. I didn't want to cut anything too small. That's got 100 uses. It takes about 10 minutes to cut one of these up for a nice flat phone like this. If you're making one out of a Droid that has the nice little hump on the back right here, those I've seen people do, and they're a pain in the butt for someone else, not me. That's why I'm not doing one for those. This Galaxy Note is perfectly flat. You do the rounded corners. Can't complain on that. That's pretty much all there's to it. Only thing I got left to do with this, like I said, clean up with a Dremel, drill my mounting holes so I can make a dock for the car. I'm going to do 2 sets of holes. One like right here and here, one here and here. Reason for that is most mounting you're going to use just 2 screws. Doesn't need a whole lot to keep it in there. You decide you want to rotate this. You pop your 2 screws out. The hole's already drilled. You rotate it, put your screws back in. Now you have a horizontal mount. Like I demonstrated, it ain't going to slide out sideways. Nice and easy. Not the prettiest, but for a total of $15 investment and enough to make a whole nother holster and then some, I don't think you can really complain about pretty. If you have any questions, ask in the thread. Alright guys, one last quick update here. It's been a few minutes. I got the Dremel out. Little sanding pad, as you can see there. Nothing fancy, just a regular old Dremel. I cleaned up some of my lines. I heated them up 1 or 2 spots here and just pushed them back in. I barely heated them up enough. I don't recommend doing it, but I did it anyway. I put my phone in at some little spots like that just to push it in, pulled my phone out, held it in place just to make sure. It's got a pretty thick case on it. Tried it, no damage done. Do it at your own risk. I cleaned up all my lines, as you can see. A little smoother. Definitely not store-bought, but it works. What I did do, I made some changes here. Dremel is great for this. Now when I place this in, my buttons are exposed. And what you can buy, if you look online, specifically Amazon and eBay, you can buy a USB cord that has the micro side of it is a 90-degree angle. So it's a little plug like that. Cable here, plug here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to order one of those. I'm going to probably epoxy it right down here. Once I get it lined up, probably put some epoxy on it, get the phone in there, line it up, and leave it sit. That way the epoxy dries with the phone there. Make sure you don't get epoxy on your phone if you do what I'm doing here. Or else you're going to be looking goofy holding this in your hand while talking on the phone because your phone's stuck. Epoxy it down in there so it doesn't move around. Keep the phone in there to keep it set in the right position. Then you just have your basic a dock. You're not going to have the docking features, but it'll be a dock for the most purpose. You'll be able to slide it right in. If you do it right, it'll line right up with this charging port. Start charging, off you go. And that's all. Just a quick update. Still got to drill my holes, but it's 95% of the way there. It works.